Avoiding confrontation seems to be a common theme in Yaakov's life. His name is Yaakov, for at birth he was holding on to the heel, in Hebrew the Akev, of his older twin brother Esav. The reason our rabbis explained for Yaakov holding on to his twin brother's heel is because Yaakov felt and he had reason to believe that he deserves to be the firstborn and not Esav. He tried to hinder Esav's emerging first, but he was unsuccessful. And so, after they grow a little older, Yaakov always reasoned that the right of firstborn belonged to him, but he never dared going up to Esav to say that he was the firstborn and that the birthright belonged to him. Instead, one day when Esav came home exhausted and starving, and he asked Yaakov to give him some of the bean stew he was cooking, Yaakov offered Esav a steal. He offered Esav a deal. If he would sell him the firstborn, if he would sell him the birthright, he'd give him the beans. Esav agrees, and Yaakov got the birthright. Later in the story, we read how Yaakov hears that Yitzchak, his father, is about to present the blessings that he got from Avraham to his son Esav. Now, Yaakov thought that the blessings were due to him because he was the firstborn, but he didn't have the courage to go to Yitzchak and tell him the saga of the selling of the birthright, and in the process also point out that his own father was mistaken and that his son Esav was not following in the ways of Avraham and Yitzchak. Yaakov was a man who stayed away from confrontation. He was not the type to get up in front of Yitzchak and say such things to him. So with his mother's guidance, he disguises himself as Esav. He then goes to his father Yitzchak with a tray of food and declares, "It is I, Esav, your firstborn. Please rise, sit, and eat of my game so that your soul will bless me." And indeed, Yaakov gets the blessings. But how did he get them? As Yitzchak himself later defined it, your brother came with cunning and took your blessings. And when his brother Esav wanted to kill him, Yaakov was not ready to fight him face to face. Instead, he fled to Haran. When Yaakov gets to Haran, he agrees with Lavan that he'll work for 7 years for Rachel, your daughter, the younger one. But when he discovers that Lavan tricked him, he doesn't divorce Leah and go to the court to press charges against Lavan for misrepresentation by virtue of not upholding the conditions of the agreement. Rather, the moment Lavan suggests that he work for another 7 years and then get Rachel, he gave in to the trickery and indeed went to work for another 7 years. After 22 years in Lavan's household, when he already had a large family with 4 wives, 11 sons, and 1 daughter, along with plenty of wealth, he was still afraid to come to Lavan and say, "Listen here, my friend, it's time for me to go back to the land of Israel." Instead, he waits for the opportunity when Lavan would be away on a business trip. As the Torah tells us, and Lavan went to shear his sheep, and Yaakov concealed from Lavan the Arami by not telling him that he was fleeing. The same occurred when he got to the land of Israel. As we are told in the beginning of this week's parsha, Yaakov hears that his brother Esav was coming with a private army of 400 militiamen. He gets very scared, and so he sends a very large gift to Esav in order to appease him. As the Torah says in Genesis 32:21, "And after that I will see his face. Perhaps he will favor me. Maybe he'll compromise with me." But this all ended the night before he was supposed to finally see his brother after so many years. As the Torah tells us in this week's parsha, and Yaakov was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. That night, before Yaakov meets Esav, it was the first time that Yaakov had to fight for himself. Until then, he had always ducked or ran away from problems. But now, no more. He could no longer bend over backwards. Now he took a stand against evil, and he had to confront it face to face. And then something unbelievable happened. He saw that he could not prevail against him. The man who was really Esav's guardian angel realized that he'd never succeed in overpowering Yaakov. So Yaakov and the man who was really an angel wrestle all night. And at dawn, Yaakov finally overpowers him. The angel asks Yaakov to set him free, but Yaakov refuses. "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And then the angel said to him, "Your name shall no longer be called Yaakov, but Yisrael." Why Yisrael? Because you have commanding power with an angel of God and with men, and you have prevailed. Until that day, Yaakov's name evoked Akev, the heel, a person upon whom everyone could walk all over, a person everyone could step on, and a person that was below everyone else. But from that day on, he was to be seen totally differently. Here was a man who could wrestle with an angel and defeat him. No longer was he the same Yaakov who was afraid of confronting an enemy or opponent. Rather, he was now Yisrael, Kisarisa, because you have commanding power which evokes victory with an angel of God and with men, and you have prevailed. So when Esav then came with his militia of 400 men to physically attack his brother, he encountered a totally different brother. This was not the same brother who always shrunk back from confrontation at any price. This was not Yaakov, the innocent man dwelling in tents, but rather Yisrael. So Esav saw that it's not worth picking a fight with this gentleman, and so he changed his tune and ran to hug him instead. With each and every one of us, there are times in our lives when we are like Yaakov, when we try to avoid confrontation regarding Jewish issues. But there are other times when we are like Yisrael, which if you rearrange its letters gives you Li Rosh, or I have a head. And we hold our heads up high, and we are proud of the fact that we're Jewish. We must ask ourselves, what is that line that we won't allow anyone to cross without a fight? What is the line that we won't allow ourselves to cross without putting up a fight? This past Simchas Torah, you met the angel of Esav face to face. No more trying to appease them and fleeing from confrontation with terror. From that day on, we will wrestle and we will defeat him. We pray for days of peace. We pray for days of tranquility. We pray for the days of Isaiah's prophecy, now incised into the walls of the United Nations. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more, to be finally fulfilled without delay. I wish you a good Shabbos.